Welcome to the Sexual Wellness Podcast, real-life conversations with industry experts on modern sexuality and how to live a happy, healthy, turned-on life. I'm your host, Laura Allen, a holistic sex, love, and life coach, passionately guiding women to expand their pleasure in and outside the bedroom. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sexual Wellness Podcast. I am currently in Queenstown in the beautiful Sherwood Hotel. If you haven't been here and you live in New Zealand, then I highly recommend that you come and indulge in this very pleasant experience. I'm coming to you today with a very amazing episode with Bonnie Bliss, who is a holistic sex coach, female pleasure expert, and intimacy educator. And I absolutely love Bonnie's approach to pleasure, to female orgasm, and I love her journey into this realm of work and education and where she stands when it comes to sacred sexuality and how to live a turned-on life. We just have the most divine conversation about anatomy, female orgasm, the different types of orgasm, how you can reach orgasmic states, cervical pleasure, and so much more. We also talk about some of the ways that you can start to expand your body for more sensitivity and more pleasure, especially if you're someone who has struggled to orgasm in the past or perhaps has never reached a climax before. This episode will be so beneficial for you and for everyone. I have also decided to split this episode into two because it was such a long, juicy conversation, and from my statistics, it shows that you, beautiful listeners, prefer shorter podcasts. So I've decided to break it up into two. So if it ends abruptly, that's why, and you know why. But without further ado, enjoy the show. Bonnie, thank you so much for being here. Honestly, we've been trying to tee up this episode for a long time. We were actually talking about this just before, and the time didn't happen, but I knew it in every cell in my body that this moment would come, and I'm so happy that it's arrived. Thank you for being on the show. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. So great to be here.
We are going to be deep diving into a lot of juicy content today. But first of all, I would love to know, what color are you today and why?
I'm red today. I'm feeling my bleed coming slowly, and I don't normally connect with red, but it's just that's where I am at the moment. I think it's kind of a womby internal kind of color.
So nourishing. Beautiful. So really, I want to deep dive into female orgasm, and I wanted to start with, what is your definition of orgasm?
That's a really good question. And it comes up a lot with my work. So I feel like I was originally I thought orgasm was the kind of thing that happens after 2 minutes with my vibrator, right? Like the genital contraction and the tensing in the body and the squeezing everything, and then that having that little release at the end. And that was my experience and definition of orgasm for many years. But since I started doing this work, like the last 10 years or so, I have realized that orgasm is a very different thing. And to me, orgasmic energy is just anything that feels really pleasurable, right? Anything that just feels really good. And that might be genital, and it might be a really beautiful whole body experience. It might be something that comes from speaking about something I'm passionate about, or, looking at a beautiful mountain, or eating something I love. It's not necessarily a genital thing, and it can be still incredibly pleasurable even without the genitals being involved.
I love that. As soon as you said the mountain, my whole body just shivered, because I had an orgasmic experience just this morning, being up the mountain, going up the chairlift and coming out the top and just seeing for miles. I've never seen anything like that before, and my whole body was just lit up with pleasure. And it was pleasure.
Yeah.
It wasn't a like sex focused, like genital centric orgasmic pleasure, but it was that warm, very sensual, very delicious, like pleasure energy, just like zoom through my whole body. And so I love how you encourage people to expand their awareness outside of the bedroom.
Totally. Yeah. But yeah, it's amazing how pleasurable it can be just being in nature, like even orgasmically pleasurable.
Yeah, totally. Well, with that said, how then would you describe the different types of female orgasm?
Ooh, my favorite topic. Well, like I was saying, for many years, I thought orgasm was just this very tension-based clitoral thing, right? So there's that kind of orgasm that might come from external stimulation of the clitoris, where there's a lot of there's two different kinds of clitoral orgasm, right? There's the kind that involves a lot of tension and like it's like almost jackhammering at your body. And what I found when I was in that pattern is there was almost like a violence, I was like trying to milk my body for an orgasm. It was like trying to get the thing to happen. There was a lot of tension and kind of violence and a lot of disconnection from my body. But I've also had experiences of clitoral orgasm that felt more relaxing and expansive and connected to the whole body and, didn't have that same kind of intense, violent, jackhammering experience. So those are clitoral orgasms. Then we can have orgasms obviously from different parts of the genitals. So vaginal canal orgasms, G-spot orgasms, A-spot, which is above the G-spot. Cervical orgasm is my absolute favorite orgasm. I could speak for hours about that. That's a whole separate thing. And then you can have orgasms from places like the P-spot, so the lower wall of the vagina, the K-spot, which is the inside of the coccyx. And those are some of the most common internal pleasure zones. But, even the thing with that, this is something that I talk to a lot of my clients about all the time. We can get fixated on like, well, right, I've got to have a G-spot orgasm, or I'm going to have a cervical orgasm, or I want to activate this area and, all the alphabet zones, right? And that's amazing and it's possible and we can do it. But ultimately, a lot of the kind of orgasms that we have connected to our genitals are, they're blended, it's everything's connected down there and all the nerves are related. And, it's not like it's ever exactly only one type of orgasm, because whenever you're stimulating an area internally, the clitoris will be a little bit affected on some level because something's coming in through the entrance and the clitoris goes around the entrance and a little bit inside. So, everything's all connected there. So those are, I guess people would call them blended orgasms. So you can have a cervical orgasm that's also clitoral. You can have a cervical orgasm that's also kind of G-spot. You can have a urinary orgasm, which comes from peeing. Obviously, as you know, with your work, you can have orgasmic experiences related to the anus. There's lots of genital related orgasms that we can have. But then there's also orgasms we can have from different parts of the body. So, nipplegasms and breastgasms. And, I had an orgasm once from my partner at the time touching my butt cheek, like just the cheek of my butt. It was really, and it was quite shocking. I was kind of like, did I just have a buttgasm? Like, what even is that? I had no reference point for it. But it was a very intense peak orgasm experience from my butt cheek being touched. You can have orgasms from kissing. Obviously the mouth is a super sensual erogenous zone, but whole body orgasm is, like quite a thing as well. And then those are just everything I've said so far. I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but everything I've said so far is just what I would call a peak orgasm. So where there's an intensity, like a build up and a really intense moment and then a kind of release. But we can also get into something that is kind of my favorite thing, or something that I prefer over peak orgasms, and that's what I call the orgasmic state. And that's just where you're feeling a lot of energy and pleasure and aliveness, like lots and lots and lots of pleasure in your whole body for ages. And to me, I find that much more interesting than like just trying to have a peak orgasm at the end of sex, or just having one little peak experience that feels good for 10 seconds or 2 minutes. That's nice. But what I'm interested in is how to sensitize my body and bring more aliveness and pleasure into my body so that I can feel large amounts of pleasure for much longer periods of time. Because for me, that can be when I'm relaxed and expanded and connected within that, it can be like a full nervous system reset. It can really be a gift that just keeps on giving and reverberating in my body for days afterwards in a way that just having a quick orgasm wouldn't.
I love everything you just said. I feel so it's almost like taking the orgasm completely out of the picture, even if it's a G spot or K spot or A spot or, Z spot, whatever orgasm, out of the picture and simply being in that pleasure state. And when you're talking about reaching this orgasmic pleasure state, how do you sort of get there and then stop? Because you're talking about holding this energy, holding this orgasmic energy in your body. And this is why I find sexuality so fascinating, because it's the sort of same holding money, like holding pleasure, like being able to hold that much, being able to expand your potential to actually hold it is a journey and a process. And so is that about like edging, and is it like edging your way up there and then bringing yourself off the edge of the cliff when you feel yourself going there, and then staying in these sort of like, how would you explain it? You explain it for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of layers. There's lots of angles we could take with that, but I guess you can divide it into things that you do in with a partner, in intimacy with a partner, things that you do in intimacy with yourself, so in your self-pleasure or self-exploration sessions that might be more genital, and things you do in your daily life. So a big part of my work is about connecting with pleasure in your life, in your body, because a lot of the time I think we get sold this idea that orgasm is genital and pleasure is genital and sex is genital, and you've just got to get in there, you've got to finish, and you've got to have the thing, and you've got to have multiple orgasms, and if you didn't have one, you've got to fake it so that your partner feels okay about it. And orgasm is this goal orientation, and even if you look at like magazines like Cosmo, it's all about sex positions. You got to just get your bodies in the right position, and then that's going to make the orgasm happen. But the thing is that for women, a lot of the women that I work with have chronic pelvic tension, are disconnected from their bodies, are really stressed and anxious in their daily lives, are dealing with, especially now, just so much nervous system activation and stress and fear about the future and overwhelm in their lives, and maybe struggling with balancing parenting and work and, relationships and just trying to deal with so much. And the thing with epic pleasure is that we need to look at it from a holistic perspective, right? It's not, we don't just go to the genitals and do the thing. We need to kind of zoom back and be like, okay, well, I'm holding a lot of stress in my life. How can I find little windows throughout my day where I can be more relaxed, or where I can remind myself that I have a vagina, right? Because like for me, I run a business. I mean, even though my business is about pleasure, I spend a lot of time on the computer. I've got a million projects happening at any given point. My life at the moment is such that there's whole parts of all the stuff that needs to happen in my world and with my work that just like probably won't get done, so at any point there's infinite deadlines that are all really important. And my task within that is to work out, well, how can I get this done in a way where I'm not cutting off my body? Because if I cut off from my body, if I just get stuck in my mind, if I, build so much tension and stress and anxiety around everything, then I won't get things done in an expansive, productive way, and I won't be able to access pleasure, you know, in a more genital sense, or in my life. And a lot of my work is about how to sensitize the body, you know, how to build sensitivity in your whole body. That's kind of how I would start working with someone. And that comes through movement and it comes through touch. And there's specific like techniques or approaches that are helpful. But I think movement and touch are two of the cornerstones for just bringing more awareness into your body, because you can't bring pleasure into an area that you can't feel. First, you need to learn to feel it. And part of that might be feeling shame or sticky stuff that's there, right? Or tension, or working with that. And then, you know, you can start to bring pleasure into it.
Yeah, amazing. You're obviously a well of knowledge here. I feel like we could do about 10 million podcasts on like every single question.
Oh, it's my favorite topic.
Amen, sister. Amen. So I'm hearing you talk about all of this and, you know, accessing pleasure, resensitizing, all of these beautiful orgasmic states that we can reach. And I'm really feeling some of those listeners out there who are just like, what? You know, I've never even had an orgasm, or I just have no idea where to start. You know, like women who are just feeling really helpless when it comes to even believing that they can experience that kind of pleasure. What would you say to someone who's in that space right now?
Yeah, I work with a lot of women who are in that position. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that when we feel disconnected from pleasure, when we feel, say, maybe a bit of shame or stickiness about sexuality, you know, it's not something that's natural, right? Like, we're all born from sexuality. Like, there's something about it that's inherently pure and beautiful. But most of us have grown up in a culture where, you know, sexuality wasn't exactly spoken about, or maybe our parents were a bit weird about it, or we didn't have healthy role models in that area, or we were told that our bodies were for male pleasure, or that we should be a certain way. And, you know, I remember for kind of the first maybe 6 or 7 years of my sexually active life, I felt totally disconnected from my sexuality. I had no orgasms. I was super numb. I was, you know, wanting to have sex to kind of please my partner. And I really just thought that sex was about male pleasure. I was just trying to make sure that he got what he wanted. And I felt so full of, I guess, shame and unworthiness and disconnection that I didn't even think my pleasure was important. And every time I had a new partner, I would say, oh, don't even worry about trying to make me come, because it doesn't work anyway, but it's fine. Like, I'm fine about it. It's all good. You know, my pleasure's not important. And that was my world for a long time. So I really understand that. And I think it's important that we're not really hard on ourselves around that, because we don't learn about this stuff at school. Like, I don't know about you, but when I was at school, you know, in the 90s, I think it's a bit better these days, but in the 90s, we literally just learned to put condoms on bananas. And then we got told to like not have sex, and we got taught about the dangers of pregnancy and STDs. And that was it. Like, we didn't learn anything about pleasure or relating or anatomy or our bodies, or that sex could be, no one ever said even sex could feel good. Like, that wasn't a concept until like I was maybe 15 and people started talking about it at school. You know, it was just this weird thing people do. So yeah, I think it's good to remember that we are, in a way, we're all a product of the culture that we're raised in, and it's normal that we have limiting beliefs about sexuality. It's normal that we feel numb or disconnected, or we don't have much pleasure, or we struggle to orgasm, or, you know, we don't know about this stuff because we weren't taught. But what my work is all about is skill building, right? It's seeing that pleasure as a skill that we can build in the same way that we can learn to become a construction worker and build a house, right? Or, you know, learn a new skill, learn to play an instrument. With my work, we're learning to play the instrument of the body. And it's going to feel a little bit clunky and weird at first and a bit awkward. And over time, you get better at it. And then you get to the point where you're really good. And then you can play amazing music with someone else, you know, like jamming together, right? Like it's, you just become skilled at playing your instrument. So it's not something to feel not good enough about. It's just a skill that you maybe haven't built yet.
Yeah. I understand for a lot of women it's so there's the physicality of it all, and then there's also a lot of emotional blocks in there that can build up for 1 million different reasons. So for anyone who's like listening, who is in this space, it's so unique to every single person. And I love your approach to just taking off your feet off the accelerator and just like coming into this beautiful place of acceptance. And then also simultaneously believing that it can shift and change, and you've got the power to do so when you're ready and when you want to. I mean, I'll share another piece for myself actually that I've noticed, and this is for people who perhaps like go in and out of feeling turned on. I don't know about you, but I definitely have waves in my life where I'm just like aroused in my like sex goddess zone, and I'm really on top of that. And then I have times where I'm really not. This year's been massive. I've been completely uninspired sexually, like totally disconnected. And I think the beauty is just like sitting in an acceptance space in there, and then simultaneously trusting, I know it's going to come back and it'll be different and more beautiful the next time. I'm not worried. Totally. I'm not going to stress myself out. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken.
Yes.
I'm not broken. It'll come back. And it did. It's come back. I'm back.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because, I'm not broken. I think that's really important. A lot of women that I work with, they come with this idea that there's something wrong with me, and we're not meant to be sexually on 24/7. We have phases where we ebb and flow, and, like you said, I think it's really natural. And especially right now with what a lot of us are navigating, like I'm not in a super hypersexual place, at the moment. Like I feel connected to my sensuality and definitely my sexuality and my, I always do a lot of practice connecting with my lower body and my pelvic space, but I'm not feeling heaps of internal stuff right at this exact moment in my life. And that's fine. I think it's natural, and I go through phases with it. And it's important that we don't pressure ourselves to be a certain way according to some weird idea that we've decided is how sexuality should look.
That we need to be like on and ready all the time. Yeah. I love how you talk about like you're still connected to your sexuality, you're still connected to your sensuality. I like to talk about it in a sense of you're stoking the embers of your turn on. So it's not about being this roaring flame all the time, but you are paying attention again to the pleasures of life that are available to us when we go up the mountain, when we feel the hot water in our bodies in the shower in the morning, all of those sorts of things. That's stoking the embers of the sensuality and your sexuality, and just staying connected to pleasure in the everyday.
For sure.
So where to go next? Oh, my questions are just all out of whack. We've gotten into a flow, and where to go now? Okay, I would love to talk to you about having multiple orgasms, because I speak to a lot of people who they've had an orgasm and it's a peak experience, and then there's like an automatic off switch in a way. So do you want to talk about perhaps it's more of a mindset than it is a technique when it comes to having multiple orgasms?
Yeah, I did a Q&A yesterday, and one of the questions was, is it actually possible to have more than one orgasm in a sexual experience? And I was like, yes, it is. So for me, right, I think we're all different, but I can say from my own experience, for me, when I have one of those tension-based clitoral orgasms during sex or on my own, I honestly feel done. There's like a build up. And I'm kind of, because there's a tension, because I'm clenching everything and kind of keeping that sexual energy in my genitals, there's a kind of build up of energy and a kind of release. And after that, I'm like, don't touch me. I'm finished. I'm done. That's it.
It's actually like almost like a get off me energy.
Exactly.
And there's even something deeper underneath that. It's like if I'm only experiencing like those kind of peak clitoral orgasmic experiences with the sexual partner, for some reason I become unattracted to him. I don't want to have sex. It's just like it feels really unfulfilling. You know, there's something like energetically around it I notice, and I wonder if that's, yeah, sorry to interrupt. It just, I know, with those, I'm not here to shame clitoral orgasms or say that it's bad or wrong, but there really is a depletive and like no energy about it sometimes once you've had one.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's that kind of orgasm, what I'm talking about is the tension-based clitoral orgasm, not the clitoral orgasm that feels relaxing and expansive and connected to the rest of your body, but the one that's like, tension, release, you know, like that kind of thing. Sometimes I understand, like sometimes just wanting that, right? Like for years, that was my thing, to the point where I now don't keep vibrating devices in my house because I've had such an addictive pattern with vibrators over the years. And, you know, I think now it wouldn't be a problem, but it's just a, you know, default that I just don't keep vibrating devices in my house just in case as a preventative measure, right? So yeah, when there's that tension and build up and release, it makes me feel like I'm done. I don't want to be touched. I'm finished. Whether I'm on my own, whether I'm with a partner, it's just the same. So I would advise, if you want to open into having more than one peak orgasm during a session, whether it's with yourself or with a partner, I would avoid that particular type of clitoral orgasm where there's a lot of tension. And I would focus on expanding the pleasure in your whole body. The thing with orgasm, especially deeper internal orgasm, is that it doesn't respond very well to goal orientation. So it's very different to that tension-based clitoral orgasm, because you can, even if you're a bit stressed, right, you can kind of just go in and do the thing for 2 minutes. And for many women, it'll happen quite easily. And, you know, we can get there. So we might be used to approaching our bodies with that goal, but with deeper internal orgasm and internal pleasure, it doesn't really respond to a goal in the same way, especially the cervix. You know, cervical orgasm needs much more surrender and expansion and just letting go of the goal, right? So I think a lot of it is about your own orientation. Like when you're in that space, are you like, right, I'm going to go for the orgasm. Okay, I had one. I'm going to go for the next one. Or are you able to just surrender and open into the pleasure that's already there? Because the more we open into what already feels good while we're having sex, the more we go into deeper states of orgasm and other kinds of orgasm than if we're just trying to get to the place. Because if we're just fixated on the goal, then we miss out on the pleasure that's happening in the moment. So I think that's really the key to opening into multiple orgasms during sex, is as much as you can drink in the pleasure that's already there and see how much you can relax your body and open into it, and trust that when it feels good, you don't need to tense everything and squeeze and push out an orgasm. You can be like, oh, this feels good. How much can I open my body into it? How much can I relax into this amazing pleasure? How can I let more of it into my body through my movement or my touch or my breath or my sound? You know, sound can support orgasm as well. So yeah, there's lots of different approaches, but that's what I could say for now.
Beautiful. Isn't that just a lesson for life? You know, being available and aware and in the moment, presence, and being grateful. And like, I want to say gratitude, but it's a sense of gratitude and appreciation and acknowledgement for what is happening right now in your body. Such a great episode. I absolutely love Bonnie's energy, and I'm sure you got so much out of this too. So next week we'll be back with the second half of this episode with so much more insights and tools and everything that you need to expand your pleasure in and outside the bedroom. Thank you so much for listening. As always, get in touch if you have any questions, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like and subscribe, or share it with someone who you feel could benefit from hearing it too. My mission is to bring healthy sexuality to the mainstream, so be sure to leave your 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app, because that way this content can land in the ears of those who need it the most. If you're looking for more resources on how to live a turned-on life, check out my website at www.laura-allen.com, where you'll find events, coursework, free downloadable workbooks, as well as my coaching packages. And lastly, I want to thank you for taking the time to prioritize yourself in this exquisite way, because when we do, that's when we can really start to show up for the rest of the world. And until next time, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back with another episode soon.